Hello everyone, this is Bobbin Threadbare.
Mr. DeWitt! Mr. DeWitt! Are you alright?
I'm fine.
You were dreaming. You kept saying your daughter's name, Sally.
She's not my daughter.
I thought...
Pain and beauty! To an artist, they are parent and child.
Cohen?
I'm sending you to find your young one. No need to thank me. I'm not so sure you'll like what you find.
Welcome back to BioShock Infinite. Wait, how are there crabs down here? How is there coral down here?
Look,
Fontaine's. Ryan sent the whole thing to the bottom.
but it's a prison now. Why would Cohen have sent Sally there?
I don't know.
Everyone has needs. I merely provide a service for those who have the means to pay. You'll find your little bird in the housewares department.
How many people do you suppose Ryan's got locked up in that place?
Enough. Fontaine had amassed something near an army. Now they're down there, spliced up and wild. Alright, there's a dock up ahead.
Takes a cold son of a bitch to do that to a living person.
What's that?
Barry, let's see.
You read your residency contract with Ryan Industries? In perpetuity. We're all buried at sea.
I mean, I suppose there's light pollution from Rapture, but it hasn't been down here that long. It didn't affect that area anyways.
Get too comfortable. Keep your eyes open.
Seem to be some supplies this way, Mr. DeWitt.
It's Booker.
What?
Just call me Booker.
If it's all the same to you, let's leave it at Mr. DeWitt.
Well, only one true Booker for her. Hey, crabs. Invincible crabs. Don't think I should have wasted one of my 3 bullets on that, but, well, hey, now we know something that we didn't know before. Which is that crabs are invulnerable to ranged weapons. Looks like that display, at least, is supposed to be covered in water. Now, what's this? Oh, goody. Experimental film. You know the problem with experimental film and modern art? At least in the sense of, you know, the popular understanding of modern art? Is that art is supposed to be a form of communication. And if you wrap up that communication in too many symbols that are too personal or... Okay. If you wrap that communication up in symbols that are too personal or too based in the crowds in which you move, then no wonder no one's going to understand what you're saying. You are literally speaking a different language and expecting people to know what you're saying. Modern art, in this sense at least, is equivalent to the most annoying sort of tourist you can think of, who expects all of the natives to understand him despite the fact that neither of them share a language. Oh goody. More of the same. You know, the other thing about experimental film and, well, other avant-garde genres of media is that a lot of the time they aren't supposed to mean anything in and of themselves. What they're supposed to do is to break the rules. The established rules. Either to find a new way or to make traditional filmmakers more comfortable with the idea of going their own way. Going with something against the normal genres. You know what I mean? So in that sense, they really are meant for film students. And the general public is not going to get them, is not meant to get them.
Let's have another look around. Perhaps we'll be able to find something to get us up and over.
Also, that first film had a very Ligeti soundtrack. Jesus. And when I say that, I mean the guy who did all of the ominous oohing and eyeing for the 2001 soundtrack. Guy did his best work in the 1960s, but he actually started in on his new stuff in late 59, so yeah, it's valid.
Could be handy.
A skyhook.
Skyhook? You mean the air grabber? Kids use them to ride around up on the pneumo lines.
Air grabber. Huh. Constants and variables.
Constants and what?
Never mind.
Didn't help these poor bastards. Although they are rather firmly encased, I have to say that.
Goddamn grabber stuck.
Mr. DeWitt! Someone's coming!
All right, I got the grabber unjammed.
I told Senator. Won't steal my lead!
Oh, for being the first fight, that was pretty easy.
Mr. DeWitt, look. Housewares. That's where Cohen said we'd find Sally. The store ran trams between the three buildings. We'll need to avail ourselves of that.
Assuming it still works.
Optimism, Mr. DeWitt. It helps in situations like this.
Although I do have to ask where the second guy's body went, since it apparently fell into a closed elevator shaft. That's different. Hey, scale model. Man, this is a huge-ass department store. It is an entire skyscraper. It is 3 entire skyscrapers unto themselves. I mean, department stores can get big, but this big?
When did you come to Rapture?
Oh, it was, geez, I guess around 51? No, 48?
That's a rather large gap.
Time. Life I had before. Sort of becomes a blur. 49. 49 for sure. Damn.
You look a mess, Mr. DeWitt.
Just keep your eyes open for splicers. They can do us a whole lot worse.
Here, little birdies. Eat it up. But it's good for you, you know? I've never heard of birds that didn't like seeds. What's the matter with you? Do you think it's poison?
Haha. Go figure, there's more than one of them up there.
It's not personal. It's business. Let's hammer this thing out.
So is it just the one guy left now, or what? I'm guessing so. I'm not hearing anybody else up there.
Follow through. It's important.
Well, at least she took one of them down with her when she died. Damn. Fell over the side.
Mr. DeWitt, look.
Well, there's the tram.
That splicer had no problem freezing a path for himself before.
I'm sure he'll be happy to do the same for us.
I have no doubt you'll prove persuasive.
Now, looks like the other way is the pretty obvious direction to go, what with the,
Mr. DeWitt, look.
Yeah. Okay. She's pointing it out, so...
Ice rink.
Be good at places any to look for our new friend.
Says it's on the top floor.
So we go up.
Looks like we're several floors down from the top floor. And I don't mean several lightly here, either.
Damn thing's locked.
Let me see that. Oh, have matters progressed so little? I could turn this with a rake pick. Done.
Where'd you learn that?
Oh, it's something I picked up a long time ago.
Well, anyway, that's obviously the right way to go, so let's see where the other way to go will lead us. At least this is familiar. Looks like we're getting access to all of the potential ability upgrades just straight off the bat here. Everything costs a lot less, but then we get a lot less money. Apparently Andrew Wright is very careful about the value of $1.
Another burst pipe.
Store sunk a few hundred feet beyond its specifications. More pressure, more burst pipes.
That makes perfect sense. There are a lot of atmospheres down here. In fact, I recall that that's a specific problem for like when you go very deep. You can get oxygen poisoning if you're not careful, if you have the same mix, I mean, of oxygen and nitrogen.
Our frozen friend leaves a hell of a trail.
So, the air that people breathe while in the depths of the ocean has a much lower oxygen content by volume than those of us on the surface.
Doesn't feel right.
Come on, just let me in, okay?
Over there. You see him?
Fontaine, he said we're all equal down here now, all in the same boat. I just want a taste of some high-class food.
Splicers. I don't think they see us. If you keep quiet, maybe you can get a drop on them. Even the odds.
Yeah. Maybe even lay down a trap or two.
So here's one nice thing about the way things work now as opposed to before. When you set a trap... Ah, crap. But when you set a trap, it can deal significantly more damage than the normal attack. In essence, it sort of doubles as a charge, as well as a trap. So So if you launch it straight at an enemy, you get a more powerful effect. That's pretty nice. I like that change. Although it does mean that you have to be careful when you're, holding it ready. Because it means that you'll,
Right there.
launch a full strength attack.
You make me feel sick.
Man, she does not want to stand still, that one. I mean, she didn't do too much, aside from making me spend half my bullets. Because you're not one of them. Shop at the department store, where everybody wears the same stuff. Looks like I got clipped by that exploding barrel. Still, it did the job. And Mr. Ford Dundee was apparently having trouble holding on to his writing ability towards the end there. And since I don't have any upgrades, sure. Why not? Yes. Unlike in the main game, where thanks to buying this DLC, I started out with special equipment.
They're real personal to me. Show me!
I have to start from scratch in this case. Also, you probably just noticed, but there are also stealth kills now.
Ryan, you bastard. Left me here to rot. Sure, I signed the contract. Helped turn Fontaine into a prison. 10 days, big rush, everything slapped at. Right before the prisoners are brought in. Near piece of shit turrets. Bam! Both kneecaps. Now I'm likely a cripple locked in a jail, surrounded by maniacs. Haven't even been paid, but I don't care. Just get me out of here!
Possession, especially when you have possession for less, is really useful.
Return my call!
The only real problem is that it no longer causes people to commit suicide once it runs out. Still, you can deal damage to them while they're technically helping you.
Can you open this?
Let me have a look.
Damn, you move fast.
All yours.
So I think I skipped getting that other guy's Tommy gun, but, well, here's one, so whatever. I've got a Tommy gun. More hand cannon ammo. Looks like the story happened here. Sounds like the story isn't done downstairs. Oh, hey. Nice.
Perfect.
Of course, we're improving the special ability count, as usual.
It used to be such a thrill to hear Ryan speak. Parasite, this. And the exaltation of man, that. Sure, it could all get a bit of a bore. But the old bear sure knew how to enunciate.
I don't think enunciation was what he was going on about.
Let's split.
Oh, hey. Nice. I killed so many I got all of my Eve back. This guy died drinking a little bit of everything. Ah, Now here's a reason to come down here. Yeah, that is definitely good, because of what I was saying before. Plasmid traps are now no longer just plasmid traps. They are also charge-up shots. And you can see what a non-more powerful variation can do. Nobody's... Wait.
Sociology. There's all kind of theories about how you sell something to a man. Those eggheads ever hear?
Yeah, something else that this DLC does a lot is have people show up where you've already been, repopulate the area. I think it's all based on triggers.
My own home!
By which I mean they only reappear once you've been in a specific area and or done a certain thing. But I suppose it does add some to the challenge, and the,
I said no.
it does kind of add to the length of the DLC. Alright. Well, that's this area explored.
Look up there.
I think I should hang out here for a while. Sounds like it'll be faster that way. As in, I won't have to spend so many of my own bullets, and that is one other thing that I'm not too fond of. You can't carry nearly as many bullets as you could in the main game. I mean, there is a trade-off for that, and we'll be getting to that as soon as I find a third weapon. Until then, it is kind of an issue. Yes. Adds to damage while aiming down the sights and on kill streaks. And that's not a both conditions at one time thing either. That's either condition will add damage, which is pretty nice. I mean, I rely more on plasmids than on actual weapons because of aforesaid issues with, you know, ammunition count, but still.
You should...
You keep all.
There, you see, it's glowing. That means it's going to deal more damage if I shoot someone. But I don't need to because I've got possession for less. And at the moment, I've got a turret on my side. A lot of destroyed hat boxes around here. Anyway, I did tell you that you can destroy things that are green. I think it takes me a little while through the videos here before I realize that fact. Not sure how I got through my practice playthrough without figuring that out, but here we are. Also, really nice thing about the whole drum magazine. It can carry a lot of bullets. Also, something else is sort of interesting when you think about it. All of the guns are just covered in, like, you know, gold filigree. Everything's fancy. Everything's just so incredibly fancy down here. Fancier than it has to be. Because that's exactly how fancy it wants to be. Right, so. Turret's been dealt with. Still packing all of the bullets into this thing. What have we got here?
of my first play, the herald said, "A dead whale has washed up at the Schubert Theater and stinks a little more with each passing night." The Tribune called my first opera as having the effect of canceling out all of Mozart's classics in a single caterwaul. And now, critics take me to task for my humanitarian work. If I were not there to find a home for these orphans, would these bellyachers take my place? An artist once said, "All critics..."
Right, anyway. Weapon damage versus melee damage. I think I'll stick with weapon damage.
Should be assassinated. I just might take him up on that.
Like, it's not that I wouldn't like trying out the melee weapon thing, but that 20% shield damage per strike, kind of a killer for me.
Come on out, how long you been talking?
Fight for me. Or die. You, fight for me.
What's happened to these people? They don't even seem sane.
Nothing beats your first splice. From there, it's all downhill. The frozen frosties, the jockeys who will hand you 1,000 volts as soon as look at you.
You sound sympathetic.
They wouldn't be the first sons of bitches who found an answer at the bottom of a bottle. But once you see them go all weak at the knees at the sight of a little sister and all her atom, they cut a less sympathetic figure.
That and all the killing, you know, kind of puts a damper on the whole empathy thing. But while we wait for the airlock to cycle, I think we'll just cut the video here. You know something? Department stores weren't around from the beginning. The nature of shopping itself has a history, which is why today we're heading to History Corner to discuss market squares, department stores, and shopping malls. The incredible expanding store. It all started with the origin of cities and private commerce. When everyone knows where the existing stores and merchant booths are, it makes sense as a new merchant to set up your own business or else hawk your wares in the same area. Centralizing commerce like this is good for everyone, really. The merchants see plenty of people coming through who are ready to spend their money. Customers only have to travel through one limited location to get all their shopping done. And city planners can restrict the loud, aggressive salespeople to just one section of town. And that's pretty much how everything stood throughout the ancient and medieval periods. Shopping districts, bazaars, and the occasional fair. But then, as with everything else, the Industrial Revolution changed things. Suddenly, there was a growing middle class with money to burn on fashion, entertainment, and other aspects of conspicuous consumption. This middle class was growing past the ability of small-scale workshops and artisans to keep up, particularly in the big cities growing up around new factories. And so new circumstances demanded a new approach. Tailors, haberdashers, milliners, jewelers, clockmakers, and others in the business of fashion banded together to create a one-stop retail space for all their customers' fashion needs. There are a few different contenders for the title of first ever department store, which is to say the first store divided into individual departments for different product types. But at least two things are clear. The first department stores appeared in Britain, and they appeared in the 18th century. However, department stores really kicked into high gear starting in the mid-19th century, coinciding with similar booms in factory employment and urban population. It also coincided with the 1851 World's Fair in London, the great exhibition which defined both the Victorian period and the visual appearance of department stores from then on. This is also around when the big names in American department stores started showing up. The first Marshall Field's, which, like most department stores, is named after its founder, was built in Chicago in 1852, and the first Macy's store showed up in New York City in 1858. While the first department stores had maybe 4 or 5 departments, these new stores were building upwards and outwards, to the point of turning entire city blocks into retail spaces. Beginning in the 1850s and continuing on to today, department stores expanded their departments to include men's and women's clothing, jewelry, perfume, pharmacies, hygiene and beauty supplies, office supplies, kitchenware, toys, housewares, craft materials, books, sports and outdoor equipment. If the middle class could afford it, you could find it. And do any of you remember the old gag where someone would come out of an elevator saying, "Third floor, women's clothing, kitchen accessories, and back scratchers"? These department stores are what inspired it. Back when elevators had to be operated by hand, the men and women who did the operating would helpfully announce what was on each floor of these 6, 7, 8-story buildings when they stopped. Department stores would also lead the way in new advertising techniques and new ways of getting people to spend the whole day within their walls. Entire floors would be devoted to restaurants and tea rooms. Macy's would introduce the concept of the in-store Santa Claus, an association which would be cemented forever thanks to the classic film Miracle on 34th Street. Macy's also offered a money-back guarantee on all goods sold in its store. And while department stores weren't the only ones to take advantage of new plate glass windows to display their products to the passing public, they were the ones to really research displays down to a science. Then there's the catalogs. Mail order and inventory catalogs are older than the printing press, and they did experience a particular boom once printing press costs dropped far enough to let people use them for pamphlets and other cheap articles, but they also intersect department store history thanks to innovators like Sears and Roebuck. See, while department stores were all well and good for cities, they didn't exactly serve the still significant rural populations who, while still poorer than city dwellers, were also growing wealthy enough to have disposable income. Sears and Roebuck fixed that oversight in 1888 by starting a major mail-order business that served customers across the United States. The company, Sears, went on to expand into department stores in the 1920s, and they continued to emphasize things like downscale affordable products, construction tools and materials, and big parking lots to accommodate the new boom in working-class drivers. These days, department stores haven't faded so much as they've evolved. The world leaders aren't Sears and Macy's anymore. They're Walmart and Target. In the second half of the 20th century, these store chains dispensed with such things as entertainment and attractive architecture in order to focus on bulk purchases and the lowest possible prices. They also took advantage of suburban development to use up as much horizontal space as possible without adding additional floors. They also tend to expand even further into departments traditional department stores tend to neglect, like groceries, consumer electronics, garden maintenance, and home improvement. Curiously, this approach also managed to spread to specialty stores, like Home Depot for home improvement, Toys R Us for toys, Hobby Lobby for crafts, and Best Buy for electronics. Instead of appealing to customers looking for a little of everything, specialty big boxes provide a wider selection for their chosen department. Small-scale stores have responded to this development by either folding or by becoming even more specialized. But then there are additional forces at work. The suburban mall explosion. For as much as the words strip mall bring to mind working-class expectations and the desolation of natural beauty, strip malls have basically been around ever since European cities started building shops so close to one another that they wound up sharing walls. Strip malls are simply retail spaces that are attached to each other to save money and share potential customers. But then there's the shopping mall. Shopping malls developed in response to the suburban boom of the mid-20th century, which itself happened for a variety of reasons. Returning soldiers were getting a good deal on home mortgages thanks to the GI Bill. People were buying inexpensive cars, which doubled as status symbols and a means to commute. There was the fact that America has the real estate available to permit an urban sprawl. And then there's white flight from urban neighborhoods thanks to racial integration in housing markets, which led to plummeting real estate prices, which caused white people to leave integrated neighborhoods because even if they weren't racist, they didn't want to end up owing more money on their property than what it was worth. Yeah, that whole thing was entirely screwed up. Anyway, point is, the middle class wound up on the outskirts of cities instead of in the center for the first time in all of history. The shopping mall really isn't that groundbreaking of a design. It combines the accessibility and variety of merchants as a strip mall with the luxurious, climate-controlled, and often multi-story experience of a department store. Indeed, most shopping malls, and even a lot of strip malls, are anchored at the ends by department stores, although these stores tend to be less visually impressive than their midtown brethren. And if strip malls and shopping malls tend to host different kinds of stores, that's only because shopping malls are trying to appeal to a higher class of customer, and because shopping malls charge higher rents to pay for all those extra conveniences. Anyway, the first shopping mall, the Southdale Center, appeared in Edina, a suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was actually a pretty good idea to place a mall outside of Minneapolis, considering a shopping mall lets you access multiple stores without having to fight through a Minnesota winter or suffer through a Minnesota summer, because it does get plenty humid up here in the summer months. The original designer, an Austrian immigrant named Victor Gruen, thought that his designs would be pedestrian-friendly city centers that would provide not only shopping opportunities, but also housing, groceries, entertainment, and everything else you could ask for, all within walking distance. Unfortunately, shopping mall owners and their tenants weren't exactly champing at the bit to expand so far beyond their business models. Plus, the acres of pavement that surround every mall tends to isolate them from the rest of the city. But with so much space available, thanks to the absence of urban development and real estate prices, and with the new highway network changing the geography of human movement, shopping malls started popping up all over the place. And while Gruen's vision may have been corrupted by the fact that nobody bothered to do what he told them to, shopping malls did wind up becoming all-day destinations, even more so than department stores. With all that added space, malls could afford to spend some of it on attractions and food courts, bigger than what you'd see downtown. The Mall of America, built in 1992 in Bloomington, another suburb of Minneapolis, has an entire indoor theme park at its center. And it attracts not only Minneapolis residents, but also visitors from around Minnesota and all its neighboring states. Even the region surrounding the Mall of America is full of hotels, restaurants, and a water park. But then it also helps that the mall was built immediately south of the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, which is the hub airport of what used to be Northwest Airlines. Personal thoughts. Shopping malls, strip malls, department stores, and big box stores are all currently in decline, thanks to online shopping, as the internet and digital distribution have proven to be essentially the ultimate means of presenting a mail-order catalog. That's all Amazon really is when you think about it. An alternate reality version of Sears that doubled down on the catalog instead of expanding into brick-and-mortar stores. Fun fact, by the way, because of this decline in shopping mall attendance, mall owners are now starting to seriously consider the sort of walking distance community center urban planning that Gruen originally envisioned. But despite the tendency of economic forecasters to proclaim that when a graph line moves in one direction, it'll continue to move in that direction forever, I don't think that physical stores will ever completely vanish off the map. There are some goods which you simply have to test for yourself, regardless of online opinions and reviews. Things like shoes and clothing. And there are other things which you need right away, like food. So you can't afford to wait a week for it to show up, or else spend extra money to get a 1 or 2 day delivery. And besides, whatever would we do if we no longer had department stores and shopping malls to point to as the shrines of consumerism and the downfall of Western civilization? Really now, though, is it as bad as all that? Consumerism and conspicuous consumption are not new. Not by a long shot. What is new is the fact that more people today have the opportunity to indulge their desire for new fashions and new gadgets than at any previous point in history. Between dropping prices and rising wages, even the poorest of American families can count on things like plumbing, central heat and air, a refrigerator, and an internet connection. I can live in a decent apartment and buy a brand new quality microphone for the sake of these lectures, despite how I'm presently living off an income which technically falls beneath the poverty line. Partly that's thanks to government regulations and government welfare policies. But partly that's because greedy corporations want to make their products affordable so that as many people as possible can buy them. So I don't think we'll ever have to worry about turning into a cyberpunk neo-feudalist society where corporations become nations unto themselves. Because if that ever happened, the infrastructure would quickly collapse, either through neglect or thanks to the fighting as corporate states fought to the death for their shrinking markets. And following that, billions would starve in the ensuing famines, millions more would die thanks to the apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic fighting over what resources remain, and then once all the dust settled, the survivors would be stuck living under feudalism classic. So while we certainly shouldn't stop fighting for a better tomorrow, I think we can afford to stop on occasion and appreciate the fact that we already have a better today. Thanks for joining me again in History Corner, and I hope I'll see you soon.